Good evening, folks, and welcome to the live stream. I hope I'm looking a little bit better than last time, as Kirsty is asking in the chat. A little bit better, maybe a few less wrinkles. So I hope everyone is wonderful. Hope you had a wonderful Halloween. Apologies for the last week. I wasn't too well on Tuesday, and then it was Halloween on Friday, so there was no live stream. So I hope you all had a wonderful Halloween. Hope you didn't eat too much or drink too much. Hope you had a chance to do some trick-or-treating or dress up. Unfortunately, I don't think it's possible to post pictures for you guys to post pictures on the YouTube channel. It'd be great if you could. It'd be great to see some of your Halloween costumes. If you're on social media, you can post them as well there and I can see them. But anyway, so what are we going to talk about tonight? Of course, the mayoral election taking place in New York City. There is also the story about the rail hero. We'll get to that in just a moment. Of course, the situation regarding taxes. Are taxes going up? Are they going to remain the same? What is the chance that they're going to do? Is she going to resign over this? Because if she's going to increase taxes, she's breaking a pledge of the manifesto and a promise she made last year when it came to the last budget. And your party is going through the roof, it seems. So we'll cover that story as well. And of course, Reform UK have their own tax plans. So I want to start off with the very first, probably one of the biggest stories of the day, which is the mayoral election in New York City. So this is the leading candidate. I don't know whether he's going to win or not. Is Mamdani. He's running as a Democrat against Andrew Cuomo, who was the previous Democrat, who's now running as an independent. Andrew Cuomo has received endorsements from Donald Trump, Elon Musk, the devil, all the best people. So I don't know how well this is going to fare for Andrew Cuomo. It's a case of he's not offering anything. New Yorkers, as far as I can see, are crying out for some sort of change. And I was going to do a video on this, but it was, he's not going to win. Oh no, not going to win as in Mamdani is not going to win. Elon Musk, that's the kiss of death. Hopefully it is. According to the polling, it was looking like Mamdani was going to win. And Andrew Cuomo was going to come second, and then there's some other guy running as for the Republican Party was going to come a distant third, and he was going to split the vote between himself and, of course, Andrew Cuomo. So, but it seems that Cuomo got a bit of a boost towards the end. Donald Trump supporting him. But of course, Andrew Cuomo tried to distance himself from that endorsement, saying, he wants me in charge because he doesn't trust New York being run by a communist or a socialist. I don't really understand why socialist is a bad word in the United States. Still, like, we're no longer living in the 1950s and the 1960s during the Cold War, but for some reason, socialist is terrible. And what is this socialist offering? Well, he wants to provide free public transport. Sounds terrible. How horrible that would be. Something that I support as well. Free public transport. He wants to do something about the cost of living in New York City. He wants to bring down rents, or he wants to freeze rents in some ways. Some of these policies, maybe they will work, maybe they will not work. But I think a new pair of hands, a fresh change is required in big cities like this. And, he was talking even about providing support for the poorest people in society by setting up sort of like food banks, supermarkets that would provide them low-cost food. People are tearing their hair out over this. Oh my goodness, the sky is falling. And unfortunately, there wasn't a campaign to prop up Andrew Cuomo. There was a campaign to bring down Mamdani, and a lot of it was pretty horrible. Anti-Muslim rhetoric, images of 9/11, telling Americans, New Yorkers in particular, don't vote for this guy because he's a Muslim. The funny thing is, he's more progressive than many of the Christians who are voting against him. Like, the Christians who are voting against him are very conservative, and he's more moderate He's more liberal than they are. But they're saying, no, he wants to impose Sharia law or something like that in the United States or in New York. And Donald Trump came out, and Donald Trump told Jews, Jews in New York, that if they vote for him, they're bad people. Yeah, you have a non-Jew, as in Donald Trump, telling the Jewish community in New York, you need to vote this way or you're a bad person. You need to vote for the guy I chose or you're a bad person. It's, yeah, so much for democracy and freedom of expression. So my fingers are crossed for Mamdani. I don't know if he's going to win or not. It seems that Cuomo got a last big push towards the end, and this may get him over the line. I hope that's not the case. I think New Yorkers deserve a bit of change. But even if Mamdani doesn't win, I think his campaign has demonstrated that a progressive social democrat can actually succeed, can do really well in a city like New York, which is pretty much sewn up by the establishment Democratic Party. Oh, we have people over from Politics Social. Great to see you all over. Thanks for popping on. Anyway, let's move on to our next story, which of course is the attack that took place this week, or on Saturday, I should say. The police have finally released the name of the man who has put his life on the line. He's currently in hospital, severely injured. Let's hope he pulls through. Let's hope for his family that he makes a full recovery. The train company LNER extremely proud of rail worker in critical condition after mass stabbing, as family call him a hero. Samir Zutioni, 48, was left fighting for his life after trying to protect passengers during the knife attack on Saturday's 6:25 p.m. LNER service from Doncaster to London's King's Cross. You know, Samir, I presume he's a Muslim, or he's from an Arab country. Not going to go down too well with the Farage lot, of course. Some of them have come out and said, what's his religion? I don't know. I presume he's a Muslim, but I don't know. He could be a Christian from a Muslim country, but I don't know. But it's really upsetting a lot of the people on the far right. They were hoping it was going to be one of our guys, but in reality, it's just an ordinary person who was there. And what's really upsetting about this as well is that the response from the right is, let's give him a medal. That's as far as they want to go. They don't give him a medal, yes, but give him a decent pay. Give him better working conditions. This is what his trade union has been calling for, and probably what he's been calling for as well if he was taking part in the strikes. This is more valuable to him. Better paying conditions. You know, a retirement plan. Something for him to return to. He probably enjoys his job. He really likes doing what he's doing, I would imagine. And while a medal, okay, you can give him a medal if you want, but a medal is not going to pay the bills. A medal is not going to feed his family. But better paying conditions would. And I think this is what we should be hearing from. You know, the Tories last year were picking fights with the trade union, saying that train drivers were earning too much. We need to get rid of them. We need to have driverless trains. We need to have fewer staff in stations because you don't need them. We can streamline it. We can make it more efficient. If this man had not been there, if Samir had not been there, God knows what would have happened. You know, how many people would have been in a worse situation if it wasn't for Samir? And it's great that he was there. And I think it's more respectful to him and his family to say, let's provide better paying conditions for people like Samir and other workers in those train stations or on those trains. So my sympathies to his family about what they're going through at the moment they have to be in our thoughts at the moment as well, that he makes a full recovery and he's able to return to normal life. So guys, I want to move on to the next story, which of course is the budget, or the budget warning. What's going to happen with Rachel Reese's... actually, before we get to that, oh, damn it, I lost it. Let me bring it back up. Yes, here we go. So Andrew Marr interviewed Rachel Reeves about... So before we get to breaking rules... Hold on, let me bring this up. Before we get to breaking the the rules of the budget or her own fiscal rules. Let's hear what she had to say when she was interviewed by Andrew Marr, who's asking whether she will resign now.
You could say to the British people on Budget Day, look, things
Sorry, that's a little bit low. Let me boost the audio a little bit.
are really bad. The headwinds have been harder. The situation has been stronger, worse than I thought. Therefore, I have to raise income tax. But I promised you I wouldn't. So tomorrow, I'm going to resign as Chancellor of the Exchequer, having done the right thing. That would be. I'm not going to behave like the last lot. I'm not going to play those games. I'm going to be honest and honourable.
And what do you think would happen in financial markets if I did that?
It depends who took over, I guess.
Oh, come on, Andrew. You know, look, I have been able to build a reputation
You'd have done
that
the
I
right
can be
thing.
trusted with the public.
Okay, so this idea that if Rachel Reeves resigned because she broke the fiscal rules or she broke the manifesto pledge, not the fiscal rules, but the manifesto pledge, if she resigned over this is what Andrew Marr is suggesting. Well, you should do the honourable thing and resign because you broke the manifesto pledge. What do you think would happen? She would bring down the government because she's tightly linked to Keir Starmer. So if she goes, Starmer will have to go. We saw it before. It's pretty much a sort of convention. If the Chancellor goes, the Prime Minister goes too. Now, some people within the Labour Party would love to see that happen, but it would create massive turmoil within the party because then you'd be in a situation where the Prime Minister had to resign. There, it would add fuel to the fire to Nigel Farage and others going, oh, we need to have a general election. You shouldn't change Prime Minister without a general election. The Tories were not talking about that many years ago. I had said that if you change the Prime Minister, you should have a general election. And you could be in a situation, now it's not necessary, I think from a moral point of view, you should do that because you were elected on one manifesto. A new leader comes in with probably a new manifesto. Brad, thank you so much for that super chat. Great to see you on the stream tonight. Snoop Dogg managed to serenade Prince Andrew, former Prince Andrew, recently with a rendition of the hit I Just Want to Make You Sweat. So now that, this is a very, very important question I have for Brad and for others. Now that Prince Andrew is no longer Prince Andrew, he's just Andrew Windsor, can he sweat? Because he couldn't sweat before. Was it some sort of magical shield that he had when he was a member of the royal family that has dissipated, has been removed? Is he like, The Boys, the TV show The Boys? He has these magic powers, but if he comes in contact with something like a non-royal, that he loses it. He's just a mere mortal now. He has to, I've said that he should be demoted down to something like Sir or Lord. But he's now just Andrew Windsor. What is he going to do after that? He will sweat if US Congress want him to testify. He certainly will. They'll need a sort of drip tray. Old Socialist Labour died when the Labour Blair came in with New Labour. Rees, a fucking wealth tax. Yes. Where were the calls for every Tory minister who broke the rules or failed to keep a manifesto pledge to resign? Yeah, well said. I said that if they break the manifesto pledge, if they break the rules, they should resign. And I apply this to everyone. I think Rachel Reeves should resign. Look, I had said this, and I couldn't understand why she was doing this about a year ago. When she released the budget, when she issued the budget, she said, no more tax increases. And I went, what the F are you saying? Because you don't know the future. You couldn't predict the future. This was before Donald Trump was elected. This was while the war in Gaza was ongoing. You couldn't predict the future. We didn't know what was going to happen in Ukraine or what's happening. Well, we don't know the conclusion of what's going to happen in Ukraine. So there's so many unknowns. I had said it was insane at the time for her to say, we're not going to increase taxes. I can guarantee you there are no more tax increases until the end of this parliament. And I didn't understand why she did that. I understand that she was trying to calm the markets, but it was a stupid approach because you could not predict the future. I had said from the very beginning they should have come in and they should have said, we're going to have to increase taxes because the Tories left a mess. Start out from the very beginning being honest with people, saying, look, we don't like the current situation. We're going to have to increase taxes because the Tories destroyed the public services. If you want to have functioning public services, they have to be paid for. So we either borrow more, we sell assets to cover the cost, or we increase taxes. Which way do you want it? Because we're not going back to the way of austerity. We're not going to cut public services. People voted us in because we were not the Tories. That's what she should have done from the very beginning. In the same way as they should have been blaming Brexit way before they got into office. They should have pointed the finger at the Tories and Nigel Farage before the last election. They should have been saying, I don't want to sound like I told you so, because it's quite arrogant, but I did say these things at the time. I said you should be blaming Brexit from the very beginning. They were talking about the Tory Brexit, not Brexit itself. But it's irrelevant, because now you're saying, well, the problem is Brexit, but it's too late at this stage because you have lost trust with the public. If you had said at the very beginning, Brexit is a disaster, the Tories have left a disaster behind them, we're going to have to increase taxes in order to fix the public services. We're going to have to borrow as well. But do you want public services that function? Do you want to go back to a time where you didn't have to wait months for an NHS waiting list for an appointment? Do you want to see public services that are fit for purpose, that actually deliver? Do you want these things? Do you want to see your councils actually functioning, not always on the brink of bankruptcy? Do you want to see these things? Well, then we're going to have to invest more. That's what they should have said at the very beginning, when they still had a little bit of trust with the public. Now that they have lost a lot of the trust of the public, all the commentators are coming out and the right-wing politicians are coming out saying, now they're increasing taxes because they have messed up.
Public finances. I've steered this country, our economy, through some challenging times the last 15 months. Increases in global tariffs, increases in volatility, increased tensions around the world, and yet our bond yields are lower than they were a few months ago and have outperformed our peers. The FTSE is close to record highs. Our economy in the first half of this year was the strongest growing in the G7. So I am not.
Okay, but then why are you saying all these things and then saying we're going to increase taxes? Because if you say everything is great, we're doing a wonderful job, then the question has to be asked, then why are you increasing tax? If it's the fastest growing nation in the G7, then why are you increasing taxes? Isn't everything great? This is the problem with politicians, where they're trying to sell you two things at the same time. They're selling you that everything is great, we're doing a wonderful job, but at the same time, everything is shit. We need to increase taxes. Be honest with people. Like, you're only undermining your own position here. Freckle Punny, thanks so much for that super chat. Dick Cheney has passed away. Old Nick's guest list is filling out nicely. What a dinner party that'll be. Yes, the puppet master of George W. Bush has finally popped his clogs, kicked the bucket, gone for the big sleep. That's all I have to say. I'm not, as we say in Ireland, never speak ill of the dead. So I give him a 24 hours, 24-hour grace period, and then unload. And you still refuse to join the EU? Sit the fuck down, Rachel. Rachel Freeze. They should be mentioning that it was basically unheard of for a council to go bankrupt before the Tories came along in 2010. Well said, yes. So technically it's not possible for councils to go bankrupt. What happens is they fall into a type of administration where the services are provided by the state, or the funding is provided by the state. So they can't technically go bankrupt. But they can be on the edge of bankruptcy in a situation where they have to start cutting public services. And you don't want a situation like that, because people will punish. If things are going well in the council, people will be happy, irrespective of who the party is. They will be happy with central government. if things are going badly in the council, but central government is doing a good job, people will still punish central government. So we saw that with the local elections. You know, sometimes it's local, but sometimes it's national, even though it's a local election. Rachel from account says, "Tea's up, and I can now do coffee after finishing a barista course, and I'm the most qualified number 10 tea lady ever." Oh my goodness. Bush Senior was a creep. The Republicans are all a bit dodgy, aren't they? Anyway, let's move on to the budget warning from Ed Conway.
Well, the budget is coming up quite soon. It is going to be a really big deal, and I want to show you why. And you've got to remember that overhanging the issue for the UK economy...
Just a super chat from Brad there. Tax the DUP, saying no. And Andrew's water bills. Not sure I understand that. Tax the DUP, saying no. Andrew's water bill. Oh, yes, so sorry. Okay, I got it now. Well said, Brad.
Economy are a couple of
You make a lot of money doing that.
Issues. The first of them actually doesn't come back to the public finances. It comes back to the fact that UK growth basically isn't doing as well as had been expected. And this is a long-running issue for the UK. Living standards just not going up as quickly as...
Because of a lack of investment. You need to invest in public services. If you invest £1, if the government invests £1, it normally gets about £3 back as a result of that. But there is this concept that the government should not invest. Let's leave it to the private sector. And this is partly to blame on the Labour government, but it's mainly down to the Tories. The Tories believed, and you know, we saw it with the PFIs, where you had these private finance initiatives, where the government would rely on the private sector to do most of the investment, and the private sector will only invest if there's money to be made. But if there isn't money to be made, they're not going to really invest. So you need to spur that investment by investing first of all, using the state coffers to invest first of all. And if you do that, you're going to see a dramatic return on investment, and you build up an asset base. If the government own a lot of assets, they're able to borrow more based on those assets. They're able to borrow at a lower rate based on those assets. Sorry, excuse me. I'm not an economist, okay? I'm just going by what I've been hearing. But the first thing has to be investment. If you invest, you get money back. It's just basic economics, but it's a political decision not to invest, just to rely on the private sector.
We might have hoped. Think back to before the financial crisis, the trajectory for UK growth, and this line is basically just showing you how well off we are as an economy. It was kind of heading up there. Then the financial crisis happened. I mean, you can beg the question of whether that was a realistic line, but that was where it was going. Then the financial crisis happened, and look, that went down, but critically, it never got back up to where that line is. And look at this line. Okay, so it's going. That's
exactly. What happened then? The Tories got involved, were elected, and they imposed austerity, which was the opposite of investment. So they were cutting, not just not investing, but they were cutting public services.
Trajectory kind of before the pandemic. It's going up, but it's never getting up to where it was before the financial crisis. And that's an issue. And on top of that issue, then the pandemic happened. And look, the same thing happened all over again. So we had that big dip. But that line is still really shy, first of all, from where it should be, or where it might have been if it carried on going pre-2008, where it was. And even here, and we'll come back to that in a second, but that is a big deal. The second thing that's kind of overshadowing the UK at the moment is that our interest rates, so the market interest rates, how much people out there in the markets are charging the UK government to lend it money, they are quite high right now. They've come down a little bit in the last few weeks. But the key point to look at, this is the 30-year bond yield, so just kind of the interest rate on 30-year debt. And compare the UK to other countries around the G7. So that's what we've got here. The red line is the UK, and this area is the average or the kind of range of other countries within the G7. And the key thing is, the UK used to be middle of the pack, so we're pretty average. Then, actually coinciding with both the mini budget, but also the Bank of England reversing quantitative easing, the kind of programme where it's kind of pumping money into the market, the UK suddenly goes from being middle of the pack to kind of top of the pack. And then in the last kind of year and a bit, more or less actually since Labour came in, the UK has gone to being more expensive than everyone else. And as I say, that line has started to come down a little bit in the last few weeks. And the gap is a little bit narrower than it was before, but we're still an outlier. We're still shy of everyone else. So those are the kind of two things to have in your mind. It's worth just saying, when markets are kind of looking at this, there's one possible explanation which says it's mostly about the monetary system. What does that mean? It means it's mostly about interest rates and inflation. And here, actually, this is quite a compelling case. It says that, and this is the Bank of England's job to deal with this is the inflation rate in the UK. Again, it's a similar comparison here. So the red line is the UK. That other kind of area here is the rest of the G7, so other industrialised economies. And look, the UK has broken free of the pack. We're the highest in the G7 when it comes to inflation. So you could say, look...
Not many politicians are talking about the highest in the G7 when it comes to inflation. And why is this? Well, we're going to probably hear about it in a moment. But part of it is down to Brexit. And of course, another is energy prices, which is an insane position because energy prices are coupled to gas prices. And if gas prices go up, then energy prices, even if you're not relying on gas, those prices go up as well. So even if you pump more money into renewables and the price of renewables comes down, well, the only people who are profiting are the ones who are selling the energy from renewables. But people who are buying the energy, even if it's from renewables, which are cheaper, they're still paying a higher rate because the prices of energy are linked to gas.
Actually, this is primarily markets making a statement about what's going on with inflation, not really anything to do with Rachel Reeves. But there's another argument that says she has an issue as well. And here, everything comes back to headroom. I'm afraid, this is one of these slightly maddening topics we've talked about quite a lot in recent years. And what is headroom? Basically, the Chancellor has fiscal rules, not just this one, but previous Chancellors as well. They've set themselves rules to try and ensure that they're not going to kind of overspend and the markets take them seriously. And in the case of this Chancellor...
Which is an insane position to take in such a volatile situation. Because you have the likes of Donald Trump, who's imposing tariffs one day and removing them the next. You have a situation where there's a war in Ukraine at the moment. We don't know how that's going to pan out. We don't know how long it's going to continue for. Then you had the situation in the Middle East. Now there's a situation also in Sudan. There are so many things going on at the same time. We have an AI revolution taking place as well, which is going to remove a lot of jobs from the job market. It's going to make life very difficult for a lot of people. We have all these factors together. So I don't think it makes a lot of sense to have these fiscal rules or to have them as strict as Rachel Reeves has them. Because what you do is you put yourself into a straitjacket, and then when something happens, then what your solution to every problem is just to cut public services. We have to tighten our belts even more because we have put ourselves into a position where we can't be flexible. The economy that is flexible, I believe, is the one that is going to succeed. Kirsty, thank you so much for that super chat. So the guy's graph says we're all broke, and a lot of words to tell us this. Yes, basically that's it. Thanks for that. Not everyone is broke. Some people are doing very, very well, and it makes sense to tax those people who are doing very, very well and spread some of that prosperity about. But unfortunately, the people who are doing very, very well are putting pressure on politicians to not touch their wealth.
She's got a few rules, but the most important of them right now is that she wants to get the current budget from a deficit, where it is at the moment. So the current budget is basically just how much you're spending minus how much taxes are coming in, ignoring investment. Currently a deficit, but it's planned in the future to get up into a surplus. They often say it's getting into a surplus, by the way. It doesn't know whether it actually gets to a surplus, that's another matter. But nonetheless, in the final year of the forecast horizon, that needs to be in a surplus territory. And right now, it is, at least according to the figures, the latest budget figures, which were kind of about 6 months ago. And that's where the issue comes. Okay, so £9.9 billion, you might recognise that number, because that is headroom. So when people talk about headroom, the Chancellor's headroom, it's this. It's all about how much she has, how much room she has not to break her fiscal rules, which so happens to be just the current budget deficit at the end of the forecast horizon. So if we take that and think about headroom and think about how much room she has before she breaks her rules and everyone starts to panic, or maybe they don't panic, this is where it is, or at least it was.
No, they're not going to panic because what you do is you point to volatility. You say, look, Donald Trump is imposing tariffs. Donald Trump has lost his mind. So we can't continue to stick by these rules. I think even the markets would understand that. This is not like when Liz Truss and her mini budget decided let's go on a spending spree with tax cuts that are unfunded. That was a big problem there. But Rachel Reeves is not talking about something like that.
Back in March, £9.9 billion. But of course, a lot of things have happened since then. So, worth just saying, looking back in previous years, other chancellors have had much more leeway. The fact that she left herself £9.9 billion, that was her own decision. She left herself a quite wafer-thin margin against that rule. But nonetheless, it's £9.9 billion. And if you kind of work out what has happened since then. So first of all, back to the chart I showed you kind of earlier on. Interest rates are higher. And if interest rates are higher, you're having to pay more in debt interest. So your headroom goes down because you're having to spend a bit more. On top of that, you've got things like the fact that, remember all those commitments? There are all those commitments like winter fuel, welfare. We're going to sort out welfare. It didn't happen. And as a result of that, the government's having to spend more money. It might come to about £10 billion. These numbers are slightly ballpark. No one knows for sure what they're actually going to be. We're only going to learn what they actually are in the budget. But for the time being, this gives you a sense of what we're talking about. Maybe £10 billion or so, taking you down. So the rule is no longer met. It's broken. It's broken. But that's only the start of it, because there's other things going on. The Chancellor and the Prime Minister have kind of committed to doing things like getting rid of the two-child limit on certain benefits. That's another £5 billion if you include a few other things they've committed to. So again, you're down even further into negative territory. And finally, that chart we started up right at the start, the fact that the economy isn't growing as fast as previously assumed. The Office of Budget Responsibility, who do the forecast for the government, they are doing their latest look at just the state of the public finance, the state of the economy, and they're likely to say, look, the economy's not doing running as fast as we thought it was. As a result of that, we're downgrading our kind of assumption for productivity. Bang, another £10 billion. Could be even more, by the way, another £10 billion or so.
I really never understood this idea. What we're going to do is we're going to invest in growth. Growth is going to be our goal, as opposed to funding public services, because this would all be irrelevant if the government said our goal is not growth. Our goal is to rebuild public services, because you can say, look, the public finances are not in good shape, but at least we're rebuilding public services. This is our goal. What is the goal at the moment? To hit a budget surplus, but you're not going to reach that. So your goal is not actually going to help people. Your goal is not actually going to help you. And it was pie in the sky to go with that goal in the first place. Once again, it would have made more sense if Rachel Reeves and Keir Starmer had said, look, our goal is not growth. Our goal is to rebuild public services, because that's what the Tories destroyed. Now, it's going to be expensive. We're going to have to increase taxes. We may need to borrow. We're going to find out how we're going to do this. But our focus will be on rebuilding public services, because if they do that, they can achieve it. They can borrow in order to achieve it. They can cut waste if they want, if they believe they can find it, to rebuild public services. They can engage in quantitative easing to rebuild public services. That's what they can do. But this arbitrary, let's have a budget surplus and we're going to achieve that through growth, when you have no control over growth, because you have no control over growth. There are only parts of the economy you can control. You don't have any control over the global economy. So let's say tomorrow there's a war, oil prices go up. This is going to put pressure on your budget. Bond yields increase. This is going to put pressure on your budget. These are not things you have control over, but you're still sticking with the idea that we are going to have a budget surplus. It's insanity. And all it does is it helps the likes of the Tories and Farage, because they'll just turn around and say, see, you failed. You set your own target. We're going to have a budget surplus and you failed it. Because at least if you said, I'm going to rebuild public services, and I don't mean this in a bad way, but it's vaguer. It's something you can say, we are actually rebuilding. Look at the NHS. We have fewer people on a waiting list. We are building new infrastructure. We're building houses. We are rebuilding the economy. And that's actually what people want to see. People don't care about a budget. They care about how the budget impacts them. They don't care about numbers on a screen. They care about how their life is going to get better. It's like the people who are running the show have no connection to the reality that ordinary people face. They think it's all just numbers. If we have the numbers match up, then everyone will be happy. It doesn't work like that. Oh my goodness. We're actually way over the break time, so I'll move on to our next clip. I just want to show you this because this is part of the problem. So this is a guy from GB News who's on Times Radio for some reason. He's an economist, some sort of economist. And he's talking here about Keir Starmer being far too left-wing. Have a listen.
This wasn't how it was like under Blair and New Labour. Yeah, as you remember, there was actually optimism because under Blair and New Labour, whatever you may think of them, they were professional people and they had plenty of people on the front bench who'd actually been involved with business, and they had plenty of advisors in Downing Street who understood financial markets. None of that applies to this administration, I'm afraid. It's far more left-wing and far more ideological than the Blair administration. I'm not saying that Labour can't do a good job of the economy. They can. I want them to. I want us to have this plurality in our politics where Labour just doesn't come in and wreck the place. But it seems as if what Starmer is doing is much more like the Labour governments of Wilson and Callaghan, rather, unfortunately, the Labour government of Blair.
God, how dumb does this guy have to be? Like, how can you compare what Starmer has taken over to what Blair took over? The economy under the Tories when Blair took over was not great, but is nothing compared to what the Tories had done. The Tories in 1997, before the general election, had not run public services into the ground to the same extent as they did when Keir Starmer took over. You're comparing apples and oranges here. And this idea that, well, it's too ideological. No, as I mentioned before, the problem is not ideology. The problem is the approach. There is no goal. The Labour... Things are only going to get better. Does anyone remember that song? That was the slogan of the Labour Party, the New Labour, when Tony Blair took over. Things are going to get better. So it was very positive. Keir Starmer didn't say things are going to get better. He said things are going to get worse for a bit, and then hopefully they will get better after that. Wasn't a great slogan. Not very awe-inducing, not very positive. But as I said previously, just before this clip, I said what they should have done is focused on rebuilding public services. Now that can't be the only goal. The goal must be to make people's lives better. That has to be the goal. If you're able to succeed there, then people are going to vote for you again. Doesn't matter who's on the other side. If people feel better off with you, they're not going to vote for reform. They're not going to vote for the Tories. People will vote for reform if they don't have any other choice. If they think the situation is dire. You know, people are not voting for Nigel Farage because they're racist. People are not voting for Farage because they like his tax policies. They're voting out of protest. They're giving the government a bloody nose because they're not happy with the status quo. Giving the Tories a bloody nose as well. So if you're able to improve the situation for ordinary people, they're less likely to vote for reform. Because reform offer nothing. You know, if your situation is improving, you're more likely to say, well, actually, I'll stick with Labour. Things were pretty bad under the Tories. Things are getting a little bit better. You know, there are new shops opening up. But the Labour Party need to keep focusing on this. They need to keep communicating this. And we don't see any of that. It's as if the communications team has been taken over by Reform, and Reform's first approach was shut it down. Don't talk about anything. Certainly don't talk about anything that the government have done well. When do you ever hear about? You hear about we're going to build this. Show something you actually have built. Explain to people how this has improved their lives. Build a frigging hospital. Build a few hospitals. Build a town. I know it's going to take some time, but build something and convince people this is going to benefit your life. We're doing this, it's going to benefit your life. It's going to benefit your community. And if people start to see their streets get cleaner, more shops opening up, more facilities in their area, more parks, the parks being well maintained because the councils have enough money, all of these things, people will feel more positive. But you have to keep reinforcing that you are the reason for that. You can't just make it better and then forget about it. Because then people will find something else to complain about and they'll vote for Reform. Excuse me. Starmer is the sticking point. Get him out. I think Bill is right to a certain extent. You know, Starmer is a drag on the party. I think they could do much better with somebody like Andy Burnham or Rachel Reeves. Sorry, Rachel. No, not Jessel. She resigned recently. Not Rachel Reeves. Oh my goodness. I've forgotten her name. How is that possible? She had a housing problem. Angela Rayner. Thank you so much, Killer. Angela Rayner would be much better. Captain Sensible. You knew things were going downhill when he and the Yob got in at almost the first fight. Into a fist fight. Who was that? Starmer is completely useless. I've been hearing a lot of the Tories who defected to Reform are defecting back. There have been a number of cases, at least some very small profile one. I really don't understand why Kemi Badenoch isn't holding press conference. What is wrong with these people? Honestly, what is wrong with the Conservatives? You had a case of somebody defecting from Reform to the Conservatives, and I actually covered more of it than the Conservatives did. I gave it more airtime than the Tory party did, and it was a benefit to the Tories. How is that possible? It's insane. You know, if I were Kemi Badenoch, and I heard somebody's defecting from Reform, the first thing I do is I get on the frigging phone and I'd say, organise a press conference. Tell the media we have a big story. Don't tell them what it is, just tell them we have a big story. Then you get all the press involved, Sky News, ITV, even GB News, invite them along. Make sure to invite GB News along. And then rub it in Nigel Farage's rub his nose in it. And then you say, here we have somebody who has defected from Reform to the Tories. Why did you do it? Let's have a press conference. Let's ask this guy lots of questions to embarrass Reform. But what did they do? Nothing. It's like they want to lose. Honestly, it's like Kemi Badenoch couldn't be bothered. She's like, fuck it, I'm going to be out the door in a few months' time. What's the point in even hassling myself? I might as well just sit at home. What's wrong with the Tories? There's not a brain cell between them. Honestly, Farage, if somebody defected, as we saw, somebody defects from the Conservatives to Reform. What does Reform do? They issue a statement to the media. 11 o'clock this morning, we're going to have a big press release. Nigel is going to give a speech. We're going to have a big story. So the media don't know what the hell what's this about? Is it a new defection? Is it somebody leaving the party? Is it a new policy? What is it? So they all congregate there. They put it on live so that it has hundreds of thousands of views. And then they bring somebody up on stage, somebody who we don't even know who this person is. It doesn't matter. And then they're presented as, here we have another nail in the coffin of the Conservative Party. Here we have another defection from reform from the Conservatives, and then they ask this, but why did you? Oh, because the Conservatives left. I didn't leave the Conservatives left me. The party is rudderless. Reform are the wave of the future, and all of this bullshit, and it works. Why don't you use it against Farage, or at least try? Excuse me. Brad, thanks so much. That's a Sorry, I still have a bit of a cold. Apologies for that. Reform UK won't be elected if every polling station is a school. Chances are many of their votes are banned. Their voters are banned from being within 100 meters of one. That's true. So it's like, where do we have to go and vote at the school? I can't go there. Maybe if I take a false ID. No, you can't do that. Certainly don't do that. Thanks, Brad. Brad is onto something there. There are times when it's best when the Tories keep stun. No point in publicising that your party's a home of the bewildered. No, for the Tories at this stage, it's no such thing as bad publicity. I honestly believe that. Scumbags, Brad. Ange was right. Plastered on TV non-stop. Engineering self-fulfilling prophecy 3 years out. Oh my goodness. Okay, let's move on. Here we have a story which is not really doing the rounds, but it's popping up. Could be a big story, maybe not. So Jeremy Corbyn.
What I can announce, as of this evening, we've just got the figures in, that we now have 50,000 members of yourparty.uk, which makes us the largest socialist party for a very long time in this country. And I'm looking forward to those numbers going up by the hour, by the day, and by the week as we work towards our launch conference in Liverpool at the end of the month. This is a mass democratic movement, and we're obviously going to be working with lots of other groups in local communities. For example, in our own community here, we have the Islington Community Independents. That last, the name ICI, has been put to a good and positive use, and Islington Community Independents will be fighting the elections next year, as will independent groups in all parts of the country. Yourparty.uk wants to work with radical forces all over the country so we bring about change. And that means cooperation between different groups and different interests and different people. That, to me, is very important. But it isn't just about elections. Elections are important because you put somebody in office with a sense of their responsibility and their accountability to those that have put them there. But it's also about what we do in a community. We're being disempowered as people. We're being disempowered by the media. We're being disempowered by social media. And we're sort of told we don't really have any power to achieve anything. And that means that in communities all over the country, where children are growing up in desperate poverty, where housing conditions are appalling, where the health service is barely functioning, where there is depression, high levels of mental health conditions, and a lot of sadness. What then happens is Reform UK turn up. And what do Reform UK offer? They say, it's a great shame, you know what's caused all this, and then immediately go off into a tirade about refugees and people coming on boats from Calais, and set off a huge thing about the alleged dangers to our community of people that have made their homes here.
And he's correct. And everything he's saying here is completely true. What Reform do is turn up. They say the problem is immigration. They tried it in Wales. Didn't really work in their favour. But they will try it again and again and again until it does work. And they're going to try it in Scotland next year. They're going to try it again in Wales next year. They're going to try it at the next by-election. Because they're a one-trick pony. They hope that by talking about immigration and linking all problems to immigration, they're going to win power. And unfortunately, they may be more successful in some places than others. Now, my biggest problem with your party, as was pointed out, they don't have a name. Is it your party or is it something else? That's not the biggest problem. No, the biggest problem is, and as I mentioned it before, Jeremy Corbyn and Zara Sultana should be in the Green Party. This is just splitting the vote. Now, people will say, well, you shouldn't be criticising the party for splitting the vote. People have a democratic right to form a party or vote for some alternative if people are not happy with Labour or the Greens. And I understand that. But what is the goal of your party? Because if it works with the Greens, for example, and stands down candidates, but this, we don't even know that whether that's going to happen or not. So if there's a seat that it's more likely that the Greens would win, your party, I would hope, would stand down their candidate, and vice versa. If there's a chance that your party could win a seat and the Greens don't have a chance, then the Greens should stand down their candidate. In the same way, when it comes to Labour, there are Labour councillors, Labour MPs who would be perhaps hoping that they'd hold on to their seat, and they would hope that your party would step aside if they're a progressive MP. But the more parties you add to the mix, unfortunately, under first past the post, the more difficult it is for you to form some sort of alliance. We want to see this happening on the right. We want to see more parties on the right because it will split the vote and make it more likely that Reform don't get into power. But if you create more parties on the left, I was still an advocate for Jeremy Corbyn and Zara Sultana joining the Green Party because I thought they could bring a huge amount of star power to it. This was before Zach Polanski became the leader. I had truly hoped that they would do this because I believe their natural home would be in the Green Party. So I'm not saying that your party shouldn't exist. I wish them well, but I fear that what it's going to do is it's going to distract from... It's going to create a lot of resentment on the left. People are investing money and time in this party, and we still don't know what their manifesto is. We don't know. We don't even know what structure the party has. Is it going to be a top-down decision-making process that Jeremy Corbyn seems to support, or is it going to be a bottom-up where the members decide policies, decide whether they support Scottish independence, for example, or Welsh independence, whether they support a wealth tax, or whether they support PR, or whether they support a whole range of policies. So Zara Sultana wants a bottom-up approach, but we don't even know who's going to win out there. We don't know if it's going to be an old-style Labour Party or some sort of new party that hasn't been seen in some time. Their pamphlet is in my letterbox. We're insulting. Sorry, their pamphlets in my letterbox were insulting. Are you talking about your party or Reform? Zara is the problem for this party. I think there are a number of people who are problematic within it. You know, they're talking about we're a true socialist party, but two of their MPs are landlords. Now, are they against landlordism? Because I don't know. Reform, okay. Thanks, Suzanne. I disagree. They should be separate and form an alliance. Some voters will be put off by the baggage of Corbyn. Some voters will be attracted to them. They need to figure the best constituencies for each party. I don't know whether the party will have a constitution where they will stand down candidates. I hope that's the case. Because it's important that egos do not override pragmatism. And I fear there's a risk of that happening within your party, where people will be like, well, why should we stand down? You should stand down. It's not, and then it's not about winning. It's about, well, we have a chance of winning this seat. It's a remote chance, but if we can encourage more people to come out, then there's a better chance of us winning it than you. And then you create a situation where there is no real cooperation, and you don't want that. If Corbyn's VBF, Jerry Adams, joins your party, they can take direction from the Oh my goodness. So guys, we're almost at the end of the stream, so I want to cover just a couple of other stories before we go. Reform UK, what do they want to do? So I have this clip I wanted to show you.
I want as many high-earning people as possible living in this country and paying as much tax as they legally have to.
Nigel Farage said substantial tax cuts were now not realistic at this current moment in time, as he pledged Reform UK would lead the most pro-business government in modern history. He was using a speech in London to promise sweeping deregulation, saying the UK...
Stop. Okay. I like this idea that Nigel Farage's Reform UK is a pro-business party. How does anyone square that circle? Including Nigel Farage. How is it a pro-business party? How is it pro-business when it supports Brexit, which is anti-business? Nigel Farage needs to go to the importers and exporters and explain to him how his party is pro-business. He needs to go to farmers who are struggling to find the workers they need to pick fruit and vegetables and explain to them how his party is pro-business. How is it pro-business? It's not pro-business. It's pro-certain businesses. Businesses who don't like regulations that are there to protect workers, to protect the environment. So it's corrupt businesses. That's who it's. So it's a pro-corrupt business party. Okay, we got it. We got there in the end.
Had squandered Brexit. Natasha Clark is LBC's political editor who was listening in. So why the ditching of those promises now, Natasha?
Yeah, good afternoon, Tom. So, as you say, in a surprise to basically no one.
Sorry. Brad says, Reform UK, putting the N in cuts.
Nigel Farage saying that those huge tax cuts, just not realistic right now. He basically put a significant chunk of his party's economic policies on ice.
It's important to remember that Nigel Farage was a huge supporter of Liz Truss and our mini budget for about 5 minutes. Then when it realised the whole thing had imploded, then he was like, well, not that much of a fan of it anymore. So Farage was gung-ho when it came to, tax cuts that get people's attention. We're the party of tax cuts. And then he realizes, well, it's a volatile situation. If I start talking about tax cuts, then people are going to think I'm a bit weird or a bit out there. So I have to present myself as a fiscal conservative. So I'm not going to talk about tax cuts. I'm going to talk about cuts to public services. That's okay, but not tax cuts for now.
Today is all part of a bid to be a serious party on the economy. It's fair to say that so far Reform have focused on immigration, on crime, law and order. The economy, I think, for many people within the Reform Party has felt a little bit of an Achilles heel for them. You've got think tanks saying that their sums just don't add up, and Labour and the Tories attacking them on both left and right. So
because Reform rely on carping from the sidelines, saying, well, we would do it better. So you can use that narrative when it comes to immigration or crime, because you don't really have to put your money where your mouth is. But if you're talking about the economy, then there are people whose job is to count stuff, to do the sums. They're going to ask you questions, difficult questions. How are you going to pay for this? Where are you going to get the money from? Where is this money going to go? How much have you estimated to calculate you're going to accumulate from X, Y, and Z? Daily Blase, great to see you on the stream tonight. It'd be great to meet with you, Daily Blase. We could do a live stream together if you're up for that sometime. Haven't seen you in ages, so hope you're well, and it'd be great to speak with you online.
Even said these economic policies will be worse than Liz Truss for the economy. So that is a narrative that I think he really feels that he has to shake. So the Reform Party leader saying today he is only going to be able to make those tax cuts once he has got the deficit down. He says there'll be some big cuts to PIP anxiety benefits, to public sector pensions. He also...
See, once again, it's public sector pensions he's going after, not pensions for everyone. And of course, when it comes to disabilities and PIP, of course, Reform UK are going after those because they don't care about the people who rely on this sort of support. Remember,
also said he did
party of the rich for the rich.
Did want to raise income tax thresholds as promised, but that would only be now to start that process. He was accused of putting a bunch of his policies in the bin. This was his response.
I didn't say we couldn't afford tax cuts. I said we couldn't afford huge tax cuts. And I mentioned
It's sort of Trumpian speak, isn't it? No. I didn't mean tax cuts. I meant big tax cuts. Yeah, it's big ones, not small ones. Small ones are okay, but no, big ones. No, big one. We can't go with big ones. What's a big one? Well, how long is a piece of string? It's like it's his get out of jail clause. Just deny, and say, well, I didn't actually mean that. I meant the other thing. It's like Brexit. Brexit was not a disaster. There was a real good Brexit. It's just we can't find it. It's gone AWOL. It's missing. It's gone to get its eyesight tested at Barnard Castle. It's like we can't find this damn Brexit. Where is it? Can anyone find it? Nigel is looking for it. He's been looking for it for a number of years now, but somehow this wonderful Brexit has absconded.
A couple of tax cuts right at the end that I think are vital to be put in place very, very early. So I would say this to you: we are being mature, we are being sensible, and we are not over-promising. But for us not to take account,
there's a double-edged sword to this. There's a risk here, because if Farage is relying on people being angry and voting for reform. But to be angry and vote for reform, people need to be angry in the first place. So you have to continually offer them something much better. And I've mentioned this before. I think for reform, they could be running out of steam. See, they're doing very well in the polls, but you can't maintain this momentum forever. And all Labour have to do is they need to improve the situation for people here and there a little bit. And then this will eat into Reform's lead. Now, Reform are, of course, leading massively in the polls. And if we've seen the extrapolations of those polls, if there was an election tomorrow, they would win a massive majority. That's pie in the sky, because there isn't an election tomorrow. And Farage knows there isn't an election tomorrow. And Reform know that there's not going to be an election for a number of years. So they have to try something new. They can't just be angry all the time, because angry people can be angry for about 5 minutes. You can drag it out for as much as possible, but that anger goes away after a bit. So you have to try something else. And I think this is what he's doing. He's realizing, look, we can't just be a protest party. We need to offer something new. But there's the risk here that if he starts to moderate, as I said before, he's going to piss off his extreme voters. You want these people to come out and vote. How do you convince them to come out and vote if they're angry? So there's a base that if they don't feel the need to come out and vote, they won't come out and vote. So you need to keep those people angry. And he's spinning a lot of plates here. He's trying to extend, he's trying to eat into Labour's share. He's trying to eat into the Conservatives, pretty much eating all of that. But he also has to keep his base happy. And it's not even happy. He has to keep them angry. If they're not angry, they're not going to come out and vote. They'll just sit at home. And remember, a lot of these people are people who've used to vote for the Conservative Party. So there's a risk that some of these people might flip back. I've said before, if Boris Johnson were to come back, he's not popular at the moment. He wasn't very popular 2 years ago. But if he did return, there's a chance that he could hoover up a lot of people who are sitting on the fence, who've gone to Reform because they're not happy with the Conservatives. And a lot of those people could return to the Conservatives. Now, this would not mean that Boris Johnson would be Prime Minister, but it would severely hamstring Nigel Farage, because it would really split the vote. At the moment, he's eating up the Conservative vote. I honestly think the Conservatives should bring back Boris Johnson for entertainment purposes. No, well, honestly, if I was a Conservative, I would be banging the drum for Boris Johnson to return. He's unpopular at the moment, but if he were to return, I think he would give the party a shot in the arm. And he would split the vote on the right. He would be kryptonite to Farage. But I think there are too many obstacles for him to return. Guys, we're almost at the end, so I just want to cover one final story. This is I want to show you two clips first. They're related to AI, so don't fall asleep. AI stuff doesn't do very well for some reason, but I think this is really important.
With lights dimmed and no workers in sight, This car factory in China uses hundreds of robots to churn out dozens of electric vehicles an hour, 24/7. This is a dark factory, an area of the plant so automated and with so little human presence that, in theory, the lights could be completely shut off. Factories like this one are part of China's bid to use hyper-automation to dominate the electric vehicle or EV market. But
now, it's important to remember that what China is doing with EVs, with electric vehicles, they're applying this to other technologies as well. AI, for example, robotics. So you're going to start to see a massive surge in robotic manufacturing in China, because what they're doing is they're just retooling the factories. Now, there you have a factory which is a dark factory, so they don't even have the lights on because there are very few workers there. Build your dreams, yeah, BYD. And what they're doing is they're going to start retooling these factories from EVs to from electric vehicles to robots, and they're going to be the ones building all the robots of the future. Now, in relation to this, so I keep linking AI and robotics. This is from Sky News about investments when it comes to AI.
Artificial intelligence, AI. Keir Starmer says it will improve public services, put money in your pocket and create jobs. Politicians are betting the house on it. But exactly who is spending what on whom?
Stop. It's not going to create jobs, okay? It's going to allow some people to maintain their jobs because they're going to work with the AIs, but the AI is not going to create jobs. It may create a few, but it's not going to replace the jobs that are lost. We're going to see massive unemployment when it comes to AI. It's the reality. Amazon are already planning to lay off about 100,000 workers. Now, some of this could be down to, well, let's blame the AI for it, but a lot of this is going to be down to automation within their warehouses. Some of the corporate work, so it's not just physical work that's been replaced by AI, but it's also people working in offices. Their jobs are going to go because of AI. If you're able to get the AI to do the job, then why employ a person who needs a wage, needs to have an office space, needs to take time off to be with their family or to be sick or whatever. So if a company just wants to maximize profit and you can do certain jobs with an AI, I'm not saying all jobs can be done, not yet anywhere. No, we're nowhere near that yet. But we're going to see mass unemployment. There is no other way out of this. Brian, thanks so much that Jacob Rees-Mogg watched this and his head literally exploded. It's like, but the spinning jenny. It's like, how did they move from the spinning jenny to? Thanks for that, Brad. And Kirsty, wow, is this guy excited? Sam Coates is always excited. He's excited about everything.
Well, we've got consultancy Tussle to exclusively analyse the data. Here is the overall spend by government departments, £3.35 billion on AI contracts, infrastructure and services over the last 7 years. And it's ramping up fast. I want you to look at this. This is the number of new contracts signed every year. And here, 2025, well, it's the highest so far. And actually, this number's only for the first 3 quarters of the year. So who are the beneficiaries and what are they doing? Well, this is all of the government contracts by size.
Oh my goodness. So there is something very worrying here. So we have the big company, of course, Microsoft. We all know Microsoft. Palantir, whichever, I'm not sure which way it's pronounced correctly, from Lord of the Rings. Okay, Palantir is run by a very strange company. It's a very strange company that provide AI services and surveillance services. And they are getting a significant chunk of the cake here when it comes to AI investments. And this is a company that's that promoted. Well, its owner promoted Donald Trump, is a huge friend of Elon Musk as well. A very sinister individual, somebody to be concerned about, and a company that we should be concerned about.
By company. Look, you can see over here the recently privatised laboratory of the government chemist, or over there's Amazon, PA Consulting, which often does intelligence services, Deloitte, lots that you'd recognise. But the biggest contract of all is a 2021 contract by the Met Office with Microsoft. to build the world's most powerful weather and climate forecasting supercomputer. They've also got a few smaller contracts for departments to use Copilot AI. Then there's another big contract with Init, a German public transport company, and that's just with one bit of the transport network, Transport for London, worth over £250 million. But this you might find surprising. Look at this tiny dot here. That is Alphabet, the company behind Google, and a massive AI investor, but they've got just 2 contracts, one with the Ministry of Justice and the other with gov.uk.
That's all going to change next year.
Doesn't feel like a revolution, does it? Meanwhile, the US firm Palantir has lots of smaller value contracts worth $376 million. Now, they're
in health and defense, 2 areas that we should be concerned about because they're building drones or building technology for drones for the military sector, but also healthcare. They want to access people's healthcare data and they want to be able to filter it. For what purpose, I don't know.
UK boss sat down to tell us what they're doing.
So in health, it's helping junior doctors draft discharge summaries. In defence, it's helping intelligence officers collate lots and lots of information and process that more quickly.
Some people will worry about big American companies coming in and using their data. What do you say to them?
Those are very legitimate concerns, and they're right to interrogate this. But Palantir is actually the answer to those problems. We are the way you keep data secure, and we are the way you make AI.
Okay, but who holds on to the data? You're saying we're making the data secure. Do you have access to that data? Well, let's not talk about that. I'm very concerned about these companies because it's not so much about the AI itself, it's about how the AI is being used. So AI is a double-edged sword. You can use it, like a knife. You can use it to cut bread, or you can use it to kill somebody. It can collect all this data. It can make the life of GPs much easier. It can monitor what they're doing. It can create reports for them so that they don't have to spend so much time behind a computer filling out reports in the evenings. It frees them up to focus more on their patients. But where is that data going? What's happening to that data? That's the big question. And since Brexit, a lot of these American companies have seen a sort of way in, seen Britain somewhat as a Wild West. It's no longer a member of the European Union, so it's not following a lot of the EU rules. It still does in some regards, but it's much freer. It's more of a playground where we can test our technologies and reap the benefits. We invest very little and we get a lot back because we have access. For example, the NHS has a huge amount of data on individuals, conditions, correlation between lifestyle and health conditions, post office box and health conditions, economic status, racial background. All of these things can be used by these companies to benefit individuals, or maybe we'll see in other ways. And this has to be something that the government is taking on board. They have to be very careful about how these companies use this data, and these companies must be transparent. We in Europe need to have our own companies. We do, and we're relying hugely on American companies, unfortunately. So guys, I want to say thanks to everyone who came on tonight. Thank you so much for your super chats. Thanks to everyone who sent me a super chat there. Thanks to the moderators for doing a wonderful job, and thanks to everyone who came on tonight. And smash the button. Smash the like button. So I will see you on Friday, same bad time, same bad channel. I'll be on the post-stream chat for about half an hour after the show tonight on Discord. So, but before we go, we have our one for the road. So I hope you enjoy this. And before I bid you good night.
My children put me in here against my will.
They sold my house to pay the bill.
In the last 6 months we've had one conversation. Would I prefer a burial or cremation?
So I'm leaving my inheritance to the Catholic Church.
Fair play to you, Mary.
I know, they won't spot that one coming.
No, they won't. Especially since you're a Protestant. Breakfast, snack, lunch, tea and supper at 7.
This whole damn routine, it's doing my head in.
When I try to complain, they just push up my doses. I kick them in the shins, but I've osteoporosis. Don't want to spend the rest of my life in this retirement home. The only holiday for me my children ever planned was a one-way trip to Switzerland. I know I love them once, but now I fucking hate my kids.
They take my whiskey, they steal my gin. At least they didn't find my heroin.
I'm only 85, I'm not over the hill. You know I'm sexually active if you give me a pill. We might be old, but we still got something to give. Cause all we want to do is party till we're good and smashed. But now we only get high when we stand up too fast. It's time to dig a tunnel and escape from this retirement home. To my children I give the best of me. I'd have been better off with a vasectomy.
I'm getting the feck out of here. I'm going to set this retirement home alight. Leave my electric blanket on all night.
Then we'll drive in Nissan Micra to the south of Spain, doing 30 miles an hour in the fast lane. And we won't have to worry about retirement plans. We'll have a channel that's booming on OnlyFans. And we'll leave a note behind that says I fucking hate my kids.
Wonderful, wonderful. So guys, have a great week, and I'll see you on Friday, same bad time, same bad channel. Stay safe, take care.